Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis, episode 11, and it's been a little minute. Like, you start to realize when you haven't done one of these in a little bit that you kind of miss it. I miss talking to you guys. You guys happy to be back? I mean, we've got the preseason finished. I'm recording this on Saturday, August 24th. The Vikings have just beat the Eagles 26-3. It was a shellacking in Philadelphia. Yeah, look, that team's going to have an interesting year. It was a lot of backup, so I don't think we learned a ton about what they're going to look like on the front lines. But you're not here for Eagles talk. You are here for Vikings stuff. And if I sound excited, it's for a couple reasons. One, I mean, we have achieved the end of the preseason, and I used to cover the Kansas City Royals, as a lot of you listening probably know. And the radio legend there, Denny Matthews, when it was a long game, and it was a lot of maybe a lot of swings and misses. It was kind of boring. There wasn't a lot of action. He'd always say that, we have achieved the ninth inning. And no, I feel like with the way that training camp has gone and how much mayhem has existed to get to this place at which we are now hours away from cut down. And when you listen to this, we might even be like a few hours away because that's Tuesday when the Vikings will have to finalize their 53. To be at this point, given all that's kind of transpired, is a nice feeling for me personally, but no one really cares about me. This is more about the Vikings. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm excited about that. I'm also, I'm headed out to the state fair. So by the time you listen to this, I'll be like 15 pounds heavier and maybe probably not as sober. So there is that too. But I've never really done the fair, really done it. I've been out there to do radio on KFAN with Paul Allen, which I will actually be doing Monday at 11. For the folks missing a day of work to go to the fair, you can find me out there. But yeah, we're gonna go. I'm just gonna to run down my entire 53-man roster projection, which you can find at The Athletic. And if you're listening to this, you're gonna get some of the tidbits, but I went in depth on pretty much every position over at that at the website where I do my day job, and so I would check that out. Whether you listen to this or not, you'll get kind of a full rundown of how I'm seeing things, and then we're going to have a lot more this week. Been grinding on a lot of features, getting ready for the season. So please keep checking out theathletic.com. Before I jump into it, I'll just say, please, whether on YouTube, you're watching on YouTube, listen on Apple, Spotify, subscribe, give us the stars. I've said it 100 times, don't know what that does, but it's got to do something. And at some point, we'll probably have an ad that's not just me giving Jersey Mike's free publicity here. So that should probably help us with that. But let's just jump into it. I'm fresh off watching that game. Thought Jaron Hall looked really, really good. Lewis Cine did not flash nearly as much as he did in week 2 of the preseason against Cleveland. Other than that, Jalen Redmond, the defensive lineman, was pretty active on the interior. I thought Dwight McGlothern, as he has all training camp, was like a willing tackler at the cornerback position, which you hear coaches talk about. So that was important to me. Levi Drake Rodriguez was active. At one play, he was too active. He swatted the helmet of Eagles quarterback. Tanner McKeon was flagged for it, but it was really cool just overall to hear Kevin O'Connell on the microphone throughout that entire third quarter. He was asked a lot of questions, which was awesome, but I would have loved him to just Manning cast commentate the whole time. That's what I kept thinking. This guy can walk you through the pre-snap process, what he's seeing, and the post-snap processing, what he's seeing at a level that nobody I know, nobody that I've really listened to can do it. It's why whenever he hangs up the headset and decides that he wants to spend time with a lot of his kids and his wife, I think he will be as good as it gets in the booth. Maybe that never happens because he becomes a legendary coach. The way a la Bud Grant has, but it's pretty to see just when you listen to him why I think their approval rating is as high as it is. This summer I did a poll at The Athletic. We had 3,000 people hop in, and it was, how would you grade Kevin O'Connell? And it was 5 stars out of 5. It was 80% of the people I think who answered those poll questions said they would extend them, and you could just see Justin Jefferson this past week said, I love playing for this guy. He knows how to handle players, and you get to see that. You got to see that with the microphone. But, all right, the 53-man, here we go. And I'm just going to go position by position, If you're mad at something, scream at me. I will never be able to hear you, but yeah, I mean, it'll make you feel better, and that's really why we're doing this. I tweeted this out, and I said I'm going to be 100% accurate, which is absolutely not the case. I got a little bold at times. It was kind of like when you're filling out a bracket, and you're like, the 15 is not going to beat the 2 here, but I don't really freaking know, so I'm just going to pencil it in. And I say this having some intel. Like, I'm not going to lie. I've talked to people internally. I've talked to other teams and executives of other teams who have given me kind of a roadmap of what they think they're interested in, where they think the Vikings might be willing to move on from some players. So, yeah, I keep dilly-dallying, but here we go. Quarterback, Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, Jaren Hall. The first two, I don't think there's much to talk about there. Sam Darnold, we'll see what happens when the season starts. I have no questions about the arm talent. I have no questions about the athleticism. In fact, I think those two will surprise a lot of people and probably have in past years. If I have questions about anything, it's the processing, and then it is just the can he not turn the football over, which we found out last year is just absolutely critical to winning games. And so that's where I lie with him. Nick Mullins, you kind of know what you're getting with him too. It's like less arm talent than Sam Darnold has. But still the tendency to probably try to fit the ball in when you're like, no, why? And then he throws the football, and you guys saw last year a little bit what can happen. But he knows the system. He's a trusted backup. I think he's respected for his ability for the toughness, the ability to take hits in the pocket. So I don't really have questions there. Jaren Hall, that's really where I think the first spot where I'm not totally certain. That's where I'd stand with Jaren. I thought Jaren the last 2 weeks of the preseason has looked as good as he's looked in his time in a Vikings uniform. And really, like, when I say that, I mean, I could throw out the stats: 100 yards against Cleveland with 2 touchdowns. 87 yards on 4 or 5 passing. He had more than 100 on Saturday against the Eagles. So like that, those numbers, I could throw that at you, but it's really just like watching his calmness, his comfortability in the pocket, going from 1 to 2, seemingly just his, like the cliche is the feet and the eyes. He looks quiet in the pocket, but like that stood out to me. And maybe I'm thinking about that a lot because I just sat down with Josh McCown and wrote about that, which you can find at The Athletic. But that's just kind of where I land with Jaren. And I have talked to, some people on other teams that have asked about him, which I've found was to be interesting. And ultimately, I mean, I think the Vikings are going to want 3 quarterbacks given, the injury history that Sam Darnold has had and Nick Mullins had last year with the back. And so, it could either be a guy in Jaren Hall who's a second year that you can maybe think highly of in terms of his ability to grasp the system, or another more experienced guy from the outside. But I have Jaren Hall in. So that's where I land. We'll see kind of how things go. He got injured a little bit. It was a leg injury, Kevin O'Connell said on the broadcast on Fox with Paul Allen and Pete Bursich. So I don't know how serious that is, just given we're recording this pretty quickly after the game. So we'll see there. But I've got him in. Running back, fullback, don't need to stick on this for a long time. I've got the obvious: Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, Kene Nwangwu, CJ Ham. Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler, I don't know what the percentage will be. Maybe it's 60-40, maybe it's 65-35, maybe it's closer to 55-45. But I heard Kwesi Adofo-Mensah on Dan Barreiro's show in the afternoon a couple weeks ago on KFAN, and Kwesi was talking about, like, in running backs in this day and age, I think he kind of compared it to like bullpens. Like, you got to have a stable of guys, and so I'd expect Ty Chandler to get a good bit of work for the fantasy folks out there curious. That's what I'd say. Nwangwu is probably more of a kick return guy, and then CJ Ham, we'll see. I've seen him used a lot in training camp, but you if you're listening to this, you probably heard that years past with what people have had to say in terms of their impressions in training camp. So we'll see how much they lean into 21 personnel. I tend to think it's going to be more than last year, which I think was like 7% of the time maybe, but early downs, That wouldn't surprise me. Myles Gaskin looked pretty good, and Dwayne McBride I have a soft spot for because he went to UAB, and I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, but hard to imagine those guys occupying 53-man spots. Receiver, I have 6. So maybe this is bold. I don't really think it is. I've got the obvious: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor, who I expect to be the number 3 wide receiver. And then I've got Brandon Powell, Tristan Jackson, Trent Sherfield. I'm not sure there's been a player who's had a more impressive camp preseason last 5-6 weeks than Tristan Jackson. He's been everywhere. He's caught almost everything. I think about the end of the second joint practice in Cleveland when he kind of torched the second team Browns defensive unit. He caught another touchdown pass Saturday, which means he caught a touchdown pass in all 3 of the preseason games. Combine that with his relationship with Justin Jefferson. They are as close as I think of 2 guys on the team that Justin Jefferson probably has. And so with the amount of respect I think the coaching staff has had for him, Kevin O'Connell's known this guy since he came out of the draft in 2020 and was undrafted. I think Kevin actually was in Los Angeles, and he was one of the people doing the pitching of signing Tristan Jackson as an undrafted free agent. So I think he's in. Brandon Powell is going to be probably the punt returner, and he's been reliable for Kevin O'Connell since he got here. So I have him in. And then Trent Sherfield, look, guys, you might be like, I haven't heard very much about this guy. I haven't seen very much, but I was talking to another person for another team who's like, look, if this guy gets cut, he's going to get scooped up pretty quickly because of his experience, because of his willingness to stick his hat in the run blocking phase. And you've heard the coaching staff, Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, others say that when this guy puts the pads on, there is a different level of physicality that shows up when he's run blocking, obviously, but also when he's drifting down the field and trying to separate on routes. Physicality is necessary for guys down the field. So I have him in. I have a soft spot, like I said, for Dwayne McBride, but it's also one for Lucky Jackson. He developed a pretty nice bond with J.J. McCarthy in training camp, so to leave him out isn't easy, and I wouldn't be shocked if they try to bring him back on the practice squad. But that's where I finish up there. We're gonna do the rest of the offense, then take a quick break and come back and do the defense, and then get you guys out of here. So we kind of run it through quickly. You get your fix. You get to go to the state fair like I will. You get to go out in the North Loop like I did last weekend and helped a guy who was feeling it, we should say. He had a night, and I don't blame him. Tight end, I've got 3 with TJ Hawkinson on the IR, which we'll see if that happens. I mean, he's looked so good out running on the practice field, and Kevin O'Connell hasn't been able to hide that. He has even admitted that he looks over and he's like, can we toss this guy in now? But it's a medical decision. They're leaving it up to the training staff. So, I think they'll be cautious. And so I have him on the IR, which would allow them to kind of place him as one of those IR spots that doesn't count against the 53. And that way you can have 3 guys. So I had Josh Oliver, Kevin O'Connell's favorite, Johnny Munt, and then Nick Muse. Oliver and Munt are surefire guys. Nick Muse, I expected him to be, but I will tell you, he hasn't practiced in probably the last week. I spotted him in the in the weight room, and he looked like he was kind of he looked fine. He was walking around fine. They have not disclosed the injury. Nobody has. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. But, yeah, I have those 3 guys. N'Keal Harry has done really everything you could do, but I just ultimately am not sure if it's going to be enough to make the active roster, and maybe he'd be a practice squad guy. Offensive line is really, I start to get a little crazy on the back half. Maybe that's because I wrote 1,500 words in the morning and then 1,100 more during the game. So if maybe I just was getting loopy and I started to get crazy, and you guys are like, what's coming? Well, I'll tell you. So offensive line, I've got 10. The obvious surefire guys are Christian Darrisaw, Blake Brandell, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, Brian O'Neill, David Quessenberry, and Walter Rouse. Those 7, I've got no question about, none. I don't think that Walter Rouse, the rookie 5th-round pick from Oklahoma, has had a perfect training camp. I wouldn't go, maybe 6th-round pick, regardless. I don't think he's had a perfect training camp. He got beat cleanly Saturday in Philadelphia. on around the edge, but just a sharp guy, can pick up all of the dynamics that the Vikings kind of place on the offensive line. So I have him in. And then I have Dalton Risner, Dan Feeney, and Tyrese Robinson. They're all question marks probably. Dalton Risner suffered a back injury like 4 weeks ago. And I talked to him about it after, and I remember him saying like, it's not that bad. I think I'll be back soon. Well, he hasn't been back soon. And I haven't even seen him. Didn't see him in Cleveland. Haven't seen him out really on the practice field. And maybe that's because I'm 4 eyes and I can't spot him. Or maybe that's just because he's been rehabbing. I can't tell you for certain. But originally, part of the reason they signed Dalton Risner back and signed Dan Feeney was because Kevin O'Connell wanted to add depth on the interior of the offensive line in the event that A, they need to replace guys like Blake Brandel or Ed Ingram, or B, there are injuries that occur that they need to cover for. And so to not have Dalton Risner and then Dan Feeney hasn't practiced in the last week, it kind of places things in a pretty tough spot. So part of the reason I even tossed Tyrese Robinson in there, who is an undrafted guy from a year ago, was because I don't know what's going to happen with the other two. One of them, maybe they're placed on injured reserve. You could probably get creative with the dynamics. Maybe they don't even make it. I can't say for sure. In the event of that, I think you need a guard. And so the question then becomes, well, is it Michael Juergens, the second round pick out of Wake Forest, who Ryan Grigson and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah high-fived over in the draft room when that happened? I remember Kwesi saying to Ryan Grigson in the video they shared, like, we got our guy. Juergens just hasn't impressed me. Now, I'd like to go back and watch the film from Saturday because I thought he had the best performance that he's had. But still, early in the preseason, he was all over the map. And Tyrese Robinson wasn't. So, just the reliability there, I was like, you know what? Why not? Again, I might have been getting loopy. I might have been thinking about the sticky rice pop or the donut that I'm about to have at the state fair, or maybe a refreshment or 2 or 7. I didn't say that, Mom and Dad. I promise I did not say that. But yeah, that's why I tossed him in there. And so that's why I had 10 offensive linemen. We will see what happens with that group. I mean, who knows? Maybe with the roster reshuffling, not reshuffling, but the shuffling that goes on elsewhere, maybe the Vikings identify a certain offensive lineman that they want to bring in as opposed to Feeney or Risner or Robinson or Juergens. We'll see. We will see. That's it for the offense. I'm going to take a quick break, get a glass of water so that my brain keeps working, I think, and then we'll hop right back into it with the defense. Hope you guys are enjoying this. The Alec Lewis Show, the 53-man projection rundown, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back on the Alec Lewis Show, refreshed, hydrated, have some defensive positions for our 53-man to go over. So here we go. Interior defensive line. I've got 6. This may be one too many, so we shall see. But I've got Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, Jerry Tillery, Jonah Williams, Levi Drake Rodriguez, and Taki Taimani. If Tyrese Robinson was bolder might be Taimani. But again, he's had a great preseason. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in the preseason. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in the idea or the fact or the opinion that the Vikings probably need a backup nose tackle behind Harrison Phillips. Could Jonathan Bullard do that job? Maybe. He could. You guys might be saying backup nose tackle. Why is it not Jaquelin Roy, the former 5th rounder? I mean, look, nothing about what Roy's done this. I mean, there just hasn't been a ton that has blown me away. And if you can get a guy who is that much newer into an NFL kind of training environment, from an athletic training standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, in Taimani, and you could develop that guy with another year at a level that you don't have with Jaquelin Roy, I think I might go that route and just roll the dice. And I mean, look, maybe it's similar to offensive line where it's like we can find a guy on the street, a Kairos Tonga, a Ross Blacklock. I'm just naming random names, but Phillips, Bullard, Tillery, they're obvious. In 5 down fronts, those guys will be the starters. You can write that in Sharpie. Jonah Williams, a veteran from Los Angeles with Kevin O'Connell, it's usually a good bet. If they're from Los Angeles, if they've had a solid camp, they're probably in. Think of it like Johnny Munt. Think of it like Brandon Powell. I'd classify him in that vein. Levi Drake Rodriguez, I mentioned him. He got flagged on Saturday for swatting the helmet of Tanner McKee. But he also had while Kevin O'Connell was mic'd up, he had a swat of a pass at the line of scrimmage. I keep saying swat, don't know why. A tip. And Kevin O'Connell said he matumboed after, which is that's like his celebration. And I saw that I believe the first preseason game against the Raiders, he had a similar one. So I have Levi Drake in. I call him Levi Drake because one time I talked to one of his former coaches and they were calling him Levi. And then in the middle of the conversation, they started calling him Drake. And so then I asked, is it Levi or is it Drake? And he said either or. So you could call him Levi or you could call him Drake. I'm going to call him both until I'm going to call him one or the other, and probably both. Again, loopy, state fair's coming. You guys know the drill. So 6 defensive linemen. At edge rusher, I've got 5. I can count, barely. That's why I did writing. Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Vick. Actually, I took AP Calculus. So let's be very clear before you guys hop on me. You think you're all nice with your no, I need to stop. Edge rusher, 5. Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Pat Jones II, Jihad Ward, Dallas Turner. I had Gabriel Murphy on the IR. So before I get into those 6, I want to give you guys a quick. Jihad Ward is a Philly native, and he played last year for the Giants. He's played for a long time. He's one of the most massive human beings I've ever stood next to. He's an edge rusher, but he weighs 280, and he can play inside. And he's a Philly native, and they played Philly this weekend. And he was talking about going back home this past week, and someone asked him about cheesesteaks. And he was like, people like Pat and Geno's, and it's trash. And I was like, wow. And I went to one of those, I can't remember, and I thought it was a little overrated. And you guys might be screaming at me on that, which is fine. And so I asked him, because I was doing the real hard-hitting, big J journalism out there. So what is your favorite cheesesteak? And he said, just go to the corner store. Well, A, I wasn't going to Philadelphia. But B, like, you got to help me out more than that, Jihad. Like, really. Anyway, the 6 that I have, 5, and then Gabriel Murphy on the IR. Murphy, we'll see what happens. He had a great first couple weeks of training camp and then had an injury. They haven't disclosed that either, kind of like Nick Muse. And so I thought the IR was a way to kind of push him, keep him in the fold, and then kind of have him undesignated not on the 50, not counting it's the 53. You get 2 of those spots. Hawkinson's the other. The other 5 edge rushers, there shouldn't be many surprises there. Grenard and Van Ginkel probably start. Jones and Turner probably back. They're probably in the line change, and you guys might be like, "Is Dallas Turner struggling?" No, it's just a development. It's just a development thing. And then on third down, I think you're going to see 5 edge rushers, 4 edge rushers, 6 DBs, and one linebacker and Ivan Pace. Like, I think Flores is going to get absolute crazy on third down. Like, and it will be fun, as it always is. Linebacker, this is where I can probably introduce. So, we'll see what happens with the players on defense who were selected in the 2022 draft. And I'm talking Brian Asamoah at linebacker, Caleb Evans at cornerback. We'll see what happens with those guys. I'll start with Asamoah. Like, he plays special teams, and ultimately, depending on the injury to Blake Cashman, who had a procedure done on his finger around the Cleveland joint practices, we'll see what his status is. And if he has to go on IR or PUP or what have you, then maybe that is where Asamoah fits in, and they keep him as a backup and then a potential special teams contributor. But to me, he is behind Ivan Pace Jr., Blake Cashman, and potentially Kamu Grugier-Hill at off-ball linebacker. So I don't know. Could a trade be possible? We'll see what you could recoup there. And at cornerback, I've got 5. And a Caleb Evans, look, like if I was to power rank who's more likely to make the roster, it's probably Evans over Asamoah. That's where I'd say. But I think both of them are candidates that if this Vikings front office both thinks about their skill sets, and a Caleb does not contribute on special teams, so that is a factor to me. And they say, you know what, right now we've got a first-round pick in 2025. We've got 2 fifth-round picks in 2025. We'll probably have a compensation or 2. What if we could recoup another 5th, 6th, 7th for some of these guys? And then that opens slots for others. That might make sense. Like at cornerback, I have an impossible time keeping Dwight McGlothern off this roster. If they are able to get him to the practice squad, then maybe I just totally overrated the performance he had in camp. But it is a ball skills, it is a maturity. He's 6'2", he's not the fastest, but he's long enough. He's willing to tackle. Like if I can recoup a 6th-round pick for Caleb Evans, and then that opens a slot for Dwight McGlothern, who's 2 years younger, who you have 2 years to develop to maybe be as good as if not better than a Caleb Evans, I think I'm doing that. I also feel comfortable with Fabian Moreau, just given what I've seen. So that's me speaking. That I wouldn't be shocked if that's internally how it is perceived. So that's where I'm at. And so I've got those 5: Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Byron Murphy Jr., Fabian Moreau, Dwight McGlothern. You might ask, well, what about a backup nickel corner slot defender? I think Brian Flores would be willing to have a Josh Metellus step into that role and in spots, in spurts. I think he'd have I think he'd be willing to have Cam Bynum, and that's if like Byron Murphy gets hurt. Who knows? That's just kind of where I'm at. We're almost kind of toward the end of it. Safety, I've got 5. The hard one for me is Bobby McCain. I had him off, and maybe he ends up making it. I don't think Lewis Cine ultimately is that hard. He's the other 2022 draftee of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's that I could see move via trade if another team is willing to give up a 6th or 7th or what have you. But the 5 safeties: Harrison Smith, Cam Bynum, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson, Jay Ward. I don't even think Jay Ward is that much of a question mark with how much versatility he provides at safety and corner. Has he been great at either spot? No. Does he contribute on special teams? Yes, and way more than a Caleb Evans has, which is kind of that. I mean, that to me that does matter. So I had him, and then the 3 specialists: Will Reichard, Ryan Wright, Andrew DePaula. Ryan Wright is the question mark if there is one of this group. We'll see what the market looks like at punter, but I don't think they were sold on Ryan Wright from the get-go, given the year he had in 2023. I didn't think Kevin O'Connell's comments on the broadcast of the punt that was down at like the 13-yard line really gave me a ton of confidence. But you signed Seth Vernon to compete with him for a reason. I didn't think Vernon was a phenomenal holder. I also didn't think Vernon had a bunch of the clubs in the bag. But if there was someone on the market who was that has a track record, I don't think it's like a crazy tie to Ryan Wright. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. But that is my 53 projection. I don't think it's absolutely crazy. I do think there were like some of those defensive options. I'm picking 14 over 3s. I'm picking 15 over 2s. I'm looking at Duquesne and thinking that they can. I'm looking at Samford, John Ekstrom, and thinking they can knock off Kansas. So that's more of an inside closed circuit joke. But that's the 53, and that's my rundown of it. If you want the full analysis and a lot of words, you can find really all of it at The Athletic. And then we will. These next couple days will be interesting. I mentioned some trade possibilities. I would expect these next 3 days to be pretty busy internally for the Vikings front office, and probably busy for a media member who's out at the state fair scarfing down donuts. But no, I'm excited for it. Martha's Cookies, you name it. If you guys listen to this on Saturday evening, A, get out and go do something and have a good time, please. But B, and thank you for listening, and B, send me your recommendations for the fair. That's what I'd say. But that'll do it, I think. And we'll come back with a couple of guests. You know, it's going to be a busy week. Like I said, cut days Tuesday, analysis Wednesday, working on a bunch of features throughout. Thursday, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell will speak to the media, and then the weekend will happen. I've got some cool stuff planned with some of the players and be out at the facility. So stay locked and loaded. That'll lead us into game week 1 against the Giants. Holy cow, we are almost there. This is going to be interesting. Tough schedule. Unknown quarter. I guess he's a known quarterback, but unknown in terms of what we'll get. Aaron Jones been pretty quiet, but I think he's going to be pretty dang good. Yeah. So with that, thank you guys for listening. Episode 11, the Alec Lewis Show. Fun to break that down. I enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Stay locked and loaded. Like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and get ready for a pretty busy early week, I think. This is the Alec Lewis Show. We will be back. Sayonara.